The Lolo Woods, issue 2, Carmen Maria Machado with Danny Strips on art. So this is the one where the town is on fire underneath, so it's always warm. And the weird health things have been happening, especially with the women who always seem to pass out and then wake up.
Yeah, they just lose time.
Yeah, and we immediately assumed that sounded quite sinister, like something really bad might have happened to them, and that's kind of what the ending of this book implies, because the ending of this book, one of our main characters, Elle, says that, you know, after that incident in the movie theater, this is what the issue is, it's them investigating that kind of. Like she woke when she got home and realized something. She realized that her underwear was inside out, as if someone had taken them off and put them back on, which has a very dark, you know, assumptions that go with that.
The implication is clear.
Yeah. So, you know, and she's kind of terrified by that. And it's them kind of investigating. I mean, the movie theater usher guy, Josh, says something really weird.
Yeah.
He says, thirsty in heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
This is one of those things where, when was this book set? This isn't like a present day one, is it?
So they talk about the in the 60s and 70s, the what was it? The heaven place, the resort.
Yeah,
was like that's the place to go and whatnot. And but I
think I remember.
So this could be early 90s.
I think I remember this being 90s because there was a reference to Cobain's death in the last issue.
Yeah, it was 90s. Right. I'm sure it was 90s.
Because this was weird, because thirsty in the modern context, in this sense, usually it's kind of associated with, you know, kind of asking for it, you know, you're being a bit slutty sort of thing. Right. Whereas I feel like that's a relatively modern term for the word. Like, it's in the last couple of years. It is the first time I've really kind of come across that.
The context of the book I read it in, though, is like they got slammered. And he's like, wait, what? And that's why she's like, wait, what'd you say? And then he covers it back up. So it's almost like they were drinking too much. Like, this is their fault. So, like, this is definitely a parable for sexual assault at this point. Right?
Oh yeah, there's no question.
Yeah,
I mean,
so that's where I'm thinking.
And it's worth mentioning that we don't even address the cliffhanger from last issue. Like, that doesn't even come up. The weird hole in the stomach.
All she talks about is how her hand feels weird since she was with that girl.
Yeah. And we see the sort of the burning flying thing over her head again at one point in there as well. We also get a flashback to how they meet for the first time. Ellen,
as kids,
and weird shit was going on for them for long before this.
Yeah.
Which has always been in the town, because the way that they deal with the skinned man who attacks them is they're like, well, we're just not going to talk about this. So it's almost like this is the norm, because they even say the friend Octavia says that she was out there doing homework and Elle was just riding her bike, but they both knew they shouldn't have been in the forest alone as kids.
It's Octavia who's narrating this, by the way, as well. Worth mentioning.
And stuff, and that, so like, and then this skinned man comes out, attacks them, but Elle's dad gave her a knife and says, because you never know when you're going to need one, and she stabs the thing, and then it takes back off and falls into this pit, and they're like, okay, well, we're never going to talk about this again. And then they become best friends.
Naturally, that's how it works.
Yeah, right.
Kids, right?
Right. I mean, that's how me and my best friend met.
I saw a thing on Twitter the other day. It was like, you know, as a kid, stand in line next to someone, you're basically married for 15 years. You know, as an adult, your best friend, you'll try and meet up once every 5 years.
Yeah. So but yeah, so they start trying to unravel what had happened to them, because they can't figure it out. There's a lot of sinister undertones, like Peter's saying. And then they go up to the party, and you kind of get a vibe of how the other kids think about them through their interactions at the party. But no, I read that when he said that you were thirsty, it's almost like he's basically saying whatever happened to you was your fault. You know, and that's I don't want to say a storyline, but that's always an excuse that when you hear about sexual assault, well, you shouldn't have been drinking so much. Well, no, you shouldn't be sexually assaulting people. Period.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how much they drink.
That's kind of what I was getting at. Because in the sense that I've heard people use it in the last few years, it's not necessarily to do with drink in any regard.
Right.
But and that might be where the origin of it comes from. But more, it's hey, they're looking for it.
Right.
And it's not always negative. I should
No.
say.
Yeah, I've never heard it in this context. When I hear someone's thirsty, I don't hear it as a negative thing. I just hear it as someone is horny, and that's both for
Yeah.
men and women. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
I've heard it in negative context. Don't get me wrong,
But
but it's
that's-
not
yeah.
exclusively negative.
yeah, because I've definitely
They'll usually throw.
I've heard someone say it about
throw-
themselves, like, "Oh, I'm thirsty." Like, you know, like it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you'll see it if someone's acting provocative. They'll call them like oh, she's just being thirsty.
Yeah.
You know.
So that was the thing for me. I
and-
was like, that's a relatively recent kind of use for that term, right?
Yeah,
In the
but
last-
see, but I feel like it both works with that narrative of if this is a sexual assault parable and this is the horror of that on the psyches of these girls in this small town.
it feels like it's
you know,
oh no, they're intentionally blocking it out, sort of, because of the horror of
Yeah,
it.
I mean, hold on.
Exactly.
Let me ponder something here. That ending from last issue. What if what we saw in that page was just a visual representation of her passing on an STD that she got from being assaulted when she was passed out?
I mean, it could be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know,
I don't.
but this is definitely is giving me now. You know, it follows vibes, right? Like
Yeah, I can see
there's
that.
this thing there.
Yeah, I mean,
that's-
there's definitely something supernatural or something conspiracy-like going on about how the fact that everyone does seem to pass out. Like, you know, it doesn't necessarily. I mean, maybe they'll swerve me, but it doesn't seem like there's just this weird, like, almost like rite of passage on the other side of the fence where all these guys have learned how to stealthily drug people and they're constantly doing it.
No, I think there is something more going
Yeah,
on.
it
in
feels-
this
No, there's
town.
something supernatural, but that is the. I feel that's the intent of Mikado, of the
I mean,
writer.
don't get me
Is
wrong.
that there's this like, and if you look in the '90s and what that culture was too, like, you know, there is a. I mean, I'm sure I don't go out, but I'm sure there's a lot of that still going on.
Oh, sure.
We have to watch your drinks and
mean,
whatnot, but like,
Don't get me
you
wrong.
can-
What I'm saying here is not like. The actual assault part of it could be very real in the sense that it's just some of the men taking advantage of the thing that's happening rather than. I mean, but at the same time though, it could go full fledged and say no, the thing that's happening to them is also supernatural. It's not necessarily just regular guys.
But you look at the guys, how they're staring at them at the party, like they're sizing them up. They have sinister looks at their face. You know, they're watching them get altered. Because here drugs are introduced. You know. With the two girls and whatnot, and you know, it's like they are waiting to take advantage, and this whole the shudder to think, you know, stupor in the town of all the women, that could also just be a stand-in for in these small towns where everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, and then
you know?
you have the metaphor here. I mean, the ground's too hot, the town's on fire thing, like that could literally be the feeling of wanting to escape your hometown, right? Because the talk here about going off to college and how Elle can't because she doesn't have the grades really, and even if she did get accepted,
Didn't have the money.
I'd have the money.
Yeah,
But it's
and
this idea.
and that's always an excuse. She doesn't want to leave, right? Because she doesn't think she deserves to leave.
Oh sure, yeah. If you get into
You
why
know?
she's saying that, but like, Octavia is determined to go, and she's ready to go, and it's this idea that it's like, she almost wants to leave as if like in a real world context, like you're determined to leave as quickly as you can because you want nothing to do with it. So this idea of it's on fire, it's like it's this literal representation of no, I need to get away from here because it's everything that touches is doomed, and we get an example of that in a sequence where Elle goes to the nursing home and she goes around with her dog, and we hear this story from one of the old ladies who lost her husband and her son in various
to the town,
both in some. I mean, it's because the husband was working in the mines or whatever, and then the son was just a a hole that opened up in the ground and took him because of what's going on under the ground. So really, dark, grim stuff, but it's this idea of the hometown being this place. It's like a bit of a cesspool that she just wants to get away from and run away to somewhere else. Whereas Elle, on the other hand, even if she's making excuses, feels that she can't, and that she's like tied to this place. So it is notable that she's the one who wants to investigate it because she sees that she's stuck here, so she wants to
might as well try and make it better.
She wanted to make it better. Whereas Octavia is like, well, there's no point. I'm just going to leave anyway. Let me just run away and not have to think about it. So it's these two opposing thought processes that are at play here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because obviously, in the first issue there wasn't anything explicitly this is a sexual thing that is all about. There was things that maybe it is, and obviously this issue makes it much clearer. But I think the moment where if you really had any doubt of any of the subtext, the moment it starts talking about the mushrooms just being dicks,
Yep.
you're like, yeah, okay, I get what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Which I mean, is maybe a complaint that it's a little bit too overt. But it was kind of a unique way of tying it in.
But also the fact that they're all of these actual organisms, and there's the organisms actually underneath, and the worst parts of it,
the reproductive part that's above ground that you can see
stick up. Exactly. And
and it makes you question this thing. Is there something under the town that is, and it's trying to? I mean, this kind of makes it feel a little bit more like Dollhouse Family, admittedly. But is it trying to impregnate these women? Right. With using the men as in the town as its reproductive organ, so to speak.
Yeah, they're the mushrooms, and the underlying evil is the greater fungus.
The men are all the mushrooms, and the thing itself is still under the ground.
Also, and that's the thing. As a man, I know how gross we can be. So I always tell my wife that if I was the opposite, right? There's no way I'd go near dudes. Dudes are gross. I don't know how you do it. Good on you. Like, I smell bad. Like, I'm gross. So I definitely get where if those the guys they're terrible and whatnot. Because let's be real, the majority of guys are terrible. Like in their own ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a problem that it's overt. I think it's making it very clear here that what it's about. I think it's introduced it in such because honestly. The first issue kind of implied, as soon as we read the part where it said they pass out and wake up somewhere, and that's almost a rite of passage in this town, I immediately worried that it was something sexual involved with that. That was the worry. So I think issue 2, making it this clear, says to me, no, it's going to be this overt for the rest of the book now, and this is what this is.
I think when I said in issue 1, it was, like you say, it was a possibility. You thought about it, but there was nothing actually pointing towards it beyond just the maybe implication of it's a possibility, whereas I'd say maybe this is what the story is.
I'd say maybe the last page of issue 1 kind of at least brought sexual themes back into it. That tied it back in.
Well, and the fact too that they're both lesbians on that too is that they're not the typical, especially in their town, right? Like
yeah, well that ties into how they're being looked at the party. I got the sense of homophobia as like the people are looking over their shoulder at them and kind of so, and maybe there's something to that, the idea that they're going to be the ones to investigate and expose this because they don't just accept it for what it is because...
Exactly.
There's something added to the whole idea of like that monologue and the narration about the mushrooms just being dicks coming from a lesbian because there's that added layer of like, hey, she especially doesn't like dicks. That's some interesting. So maybe even the idea of their sexuality at play here is also going to be a theme.
That wouldn't be surprising
as we go through it. So, no, interesting.
Some creepy art here, like when the ground swallows the kid's there and then gone. Like there's that the human or the rabbits with human eyes, the flipping skinned man, like. The art is like you guys are talking about that with Dennis Cowan. It's super scratchy, kind of here as well.
I think it's less scratchy, more heavy ink shadows.
Yeah, but it's the same kind of vibe where it's just a little bit off, so it sets the tone, to where it needs to be. But yeah, no, this is a real good book. It's definitely more fun to talk about than it is to read. As weird as that is, like it's a good book, but
I think it will make a fantastic trade.
Yeah, I hope someone decides to adapt this. I'd love to watch this play out visually.
I can see this as a great movie.
Yeah, 6 issues is perfect for a movie. So, yeah, that's fair. All right, what are you giving it, Matt?
I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Connor?
I'm gonna go with a straight 8.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm going to give it an 8 as well. I will say I like this more than issue 1, and I think as it's going on, I think arguably the conversation out of the Hill House books, even though I still think Basket Full of Heads is my favourite, I think this has more to talk about in terms of depth.
Yeah,
I agree, because I think for me, Dollhouse Family is probably my favourite, with a Basket Full of Heads a close second. And I enjoy both of those to read more than this book, but I think this has a lot more deeper themes going on in it.
Yeah.